Hey, everybody. This is Dr. Jess and Paul, and this is volume 3 of our Solving the Health Puzzle, Why Am I Sick? The Real Reasons. The last 2 are up on Paul's feed and my feed, and you can get it, and it was getting excellent response. And Paul's going to continue this week by going into the very basis of illness. Next week, I will be talking about the physiological aspects of it, and we're going to start putting this all together. And you're going to get the idea and the actionable things to do to start getting your health back on board, if you will. So go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, well, hello again, mate. It's always good to see you.
Always good to see you, brother.
I've never spoken to you so much. It's like every week we get to chat. It's amazing. So I want to follow on from last week, and it's going to be a real quick one because we're kind of established now that outcomes, symptoms, disease, whatever it is you want to call it, illness, are driven by multiple factors. Right? We know they're always multifactorial cases, and you're a specialist in that, right? It's never just one thing. It can't be. So we know behavior drives a lot of those things, and we know the beliefs drive the behaviors. So the first thing that people need to be aware of is, where did those beliefs come from? And what's really, really, in one way, interesting and the other way tragic, is that the majority of our beliefs are not of our choosing. They have been given to us by other influences. And so if we look at it from a logical perspective, when you're born, your parents will give you beliefs of whatever it is that they are doing or the way they're acting and whatever. And then you will go to kindergarten, nursery, they call it over here, and you'll mix with children who have their own beliefs and their own ways of going on, and then you'll pick up things from them. Now, I'll give you a great example. I've got a 3-year-old, nearly 3, been at nursery a year, comes home after about 3 months at nursery and had a bowl of food which had some liquid in it at home. She'd finished it. I think it was bone broth or something. Anyway, she'd finished it, and then she picked it up and started drinking out of the bowl. And both me and my missus looked at her and went, where did you get that? Right? Because we don't do it. But this is the reason I'm saying it, is because clearly she picked it up from someone at school, another child. The child picked it up from their parents. Their parents, it's irrelevant what their intention was, but their parents do those things. The child does it. That child has influenced my child. Indirectly, those parents have influenced my child. The reason I'm bringing that up is because influence comes from anywhere, places we don't even know, right? So our core beliefs tend to come from peer groups, friends, parents, whatever, marketing, TV advertising, media is a massive, massive driver, even from a very, very young age. Most people watch TV. Most people get hammered with advertising for all sorts of weird and wonderful things. And we instill a belief in ourselves that if it's on TV, it must be true. Yeah. It's only within the last 5 years that fake news has become a thing. Right? Fake news has been around for years.
Right.
But it's only recently that we've actually gone, that's nonsense, right? And so prior to that, we're believing everything we're told, and it shapes us. Then we go to high school and we have older children, and they get interested in certain things, and you get interested in certain things, and then your beliefs come from there. And then you get into the big wide world, and you're still getting influenced by media, television advertising, peer groups, the new job, the new boss, whatever it is that you're doing. Then you get into a place where social media comes about, and that just hammers you with every single thing that they want you to see, regardless of its value to you, because it's all of value to them, right? So if the belief is that I need to eat this food to get a 6-pack, and it's all over social media, and that's the way you do it, that's where your action is going to go. Regardless of whether it's true, false, or indifferent, or if it's going to completely ruin your blood glucose regulation, it's going to give you liver issues, it's irrelevant. The fact is, if I eat this for breakfast, this for lunch, this for dinner, I have to eat 6 times a day, I have to do cardio, I have to do this, and this, that is something that unquestionably you go and do, And we know, because we've seen lots of them, that you come out of that sick and broken. On the way, you've bought all the supplements, all the protein powders, all the skipping ropes, all the gym wear, and all the other things that go with it. So what it's done is it's not a choice of yours. You've been influenced by this outside force, and a myriad of things, the things I've just mentioned, have all benefited from it. The supplement company, the clothing company, the equipment company, the gym, whatever it is. They are all now benefiting from something they are driving you down that actually wasn't your choice. Not at your benefit, but for their benefit. Now, the sad thing is, once you become the person that buys that and uses that and drinks that and eats that, you become a person that does those things. And that intrinsically affects your philosophy and your views on what is important. Right? If you get somebody who's a gym bunny, they used to call them, and that's all they do is they focus on that stuff, and then this other person comes along and they are interested in Aesop's fables, right, which is completely the opposite end of the spectrum, they're not going to have the same kind of influences. They're not going to be the same sort of people. They're probably not going to have the same sort of actions. Doesn't matter one's right or one's wrong. It's irrelevant. The fact is, how do things from outside influence us? And that's where our beliefs come from. And it's almost impossible to not be influenced by them unless you are hyper aware of it. And then you get the things like Amazon or whatever other big online retailer there is that encourage you to buy certain things based on your previous purchases.
And they're good at it. They're very good at it.
They've spent a lot of money at doing that, right? And all of a sudden you're buying an air fryer for your friend and you give it them as a Christmas present. And now that person owns an air fryer he never on his list to buy one of those. He was never that sort of person. Now he is.
He is now.
but that then means that other things are associated to that become into his awareness, for good or bad, right? It happens that an air fryer is actually quite a good thing and people can get good value out of it and good health benefits. And therefore that brings other good health benefits in. So maybe that wasn't a bad influence, but the beliefs behind it, if the belief was, here's a sandwich toaster, and what you do to get the sandwich absolutely right is you put lots of butter on the outside of it, lots of butter on the inside, you put loads of cheese in it and loads of ham, and then you push it down and you get this amazing grilled toasty, whatever it is you guys call it out there. That's not necessarily a good influence, right? That's not necessarily a good belief to be behaving that way. And so it's really important to know that we get all these influences from a very young age, from every aspect of our life. I spoke to somebody yesterday. She was on my podcast. She is a phenomenal person when it comes to helping women connect with their cycle. And she just such a lovely, lovely woman. And I'm chatting to her on the call and she said, this whole business of hers, the whole business of hers came from a meeting that we had at Starbucks. It was her and her husband and me and my missus, and we were chatting and she was talking about something that went on. And I said to her, as a throwaway comment, Jess, I promise you, I said, have you checked your progesterone? And she went, what's that? Right. And this was years and years and years ago, right? And I thought, oh, well, I explained it. And I don't, honestly, it took me a long time to even recall the meeting happening, right? My missus had to tell me, don't you remember we did this? And I went, oh, yeah, okay. I didn't remember it at all. To the lady, it was the most significant thing in her life because it changed the path of her life for the next 6 years and brought her to where she is now. So don't ever be misunderstood as to how powerful throwaway comments can be on people's beliefs, behaviors, and outcomes. And this is me not even purposely trying to do something. Imagine if I was purposely trying to manipulate your behavior for my benefit and I was really good at it and I had $100 million behind me to do it, you would stand no chance. That is what's happening in the world. And the end result is the highest rates of cardiovascular disease, highest rates of obesity, cancer, dementia, Alzheimer's that the world has ever seen. that's how these things are influencing our behaviors. Anyway, that's my bit of rant. Just thought I'd put it out there.
You're absolutely right, because we're almost we're inured to what's out there. We just kind of accept it. If you're online, it's the pop-up ads. And you have to realize it. And I don't think how many people actually realize what's behind the choices you can make. One good example I've always given is way back when there was a 1-a-day vitamin. That was it, 1 a day. Okay. And so everybody in the family took this little pill, okay, that had all the vitamins and minerals you could possibly need. Let's just say. The vitamin company said, gee, everybody's taking this one vitamin. Let's make men's and women's vitamins. And the real difference, there's not any real significant difference between the vitamins. Maybe in the men's there's some saw palmetto, and in the women's there's some black cohosh, okay, but not really enough to do anything. But we can now sell it as a men's vitamin and put all the benefits there. And a women's vitamin, now the families are buying 2 bottles of vitamins. Okay, realizing that families have children, they said, gee, the kids aren't going to take something that has an estrogen in it, or something that will build testosterone or protect the prostate. What does a little boy need for that? Let's create children's vitamins, and we're going to make them like Flintstones, or we're going to put a lot of sugar in them. We're going to make them tasty. We're going to make them subpar. But now the families are buying 3 bottles of vitamins. Okay, but of course then they have babies, and babies can't chew, so they make infant and liquid formulas for little ones. Now they'll buy 4 vitamins. And guess what? And they put them in forms that are cheap. They don't get absorbed very well. And you don't even know it. They have calcium chews for women because of osteoporosis, but that's calcium carbonate. So you chew it, you think you're doing yourself a favor because you're giving yourself calcium. And it's the farthest thing from the truth, because the calcium carbonate hits the stomach with the hydrochloric acid and becomes the bicarbonate ion, which neutralizes the acid, and it becomes calcium chloride, which is a rock, which is limestone. So it chelates out, it precipitates out. So there's not very much ionic calcium for you to absorb.
And that's a perfect example of how the influence of the big pharma, if you like,
right,
has got people to behave in a certain way.
Right, exactly.
It's the same across the board, like everywhere, right?
You create the need, you fulfill the need.
Yeah.
You create the problem, you solve the problem. You have to know there's a problem first, and then we're going to solve it.
I saw a thing yesterday, and it reminded me of something that I heard decades ago, and I haven't mentioned it recently because it just fell out of my head. But the word diet comes from the Greek word. Can't remember what the actual word is, but the meaning is way of life, right? So, and not weight loss protocol,
right?
And even that has been taken and twisted around and made to show this is how you need to lose weight. You must go on a diet, but really, the influence should be for you to reduce your weight. This is the way of life you need to follow. So that way, it's a completely different message, right? Diet is temporary, calorie restriction, like, Weight Watchers, whatever it is.
Right.
Way of life is, this is how I fix everything and get everything from the ground up, which is what we are talking about in this series, so that I never have these issues again. Because prevention is the only way to cure cancer, Alzheimer's, dementia, cardiovascular disease, because there's no cure for it once you get it. So prevention is the only way to cure it. And so
once you get those things, there's a fair chance that you can reverse some of it or all of it, depending on the individual. But it would be a matter of changing habits that are very deeply ingrained to get rid of inflammation and so forth.
How much easier would it be to change them before you get it?
Absolutely. But we're a reactive society. It's much easier to make somebody understand that if you have this, do that. But it's a little more difficult for the general public because of the way we've been trained over years to say, let's prevent this from happening. And in that stead, there's very big business, there's very big money to be made in prevention. So frankly, you don't know who to believe.
The big money's been made in cure or trying to cure. But here's the thing, right? Why is it we're all of the opinion that, oh, it never happened to me, it's not a problem, and anyway, if I get it, so what? I'll get fixed.
Right.
What? Who's influenced that belief? Because it's not true, right?
It's not
If there
true.
was as much money implemented and invested into the prevention of this stuff, our beliefs would be different.
What's out there as prevention now is not really prevention. Okay, what's being paid for or promulgated to the public of prevention is not really prevention. One of my famous stories is talking about leaky gut syndrome, because that is the great creator or continuer, if you will, of chronic inflammation. And there's many books on leaky gut syndrome and how to fix it. And they're usually, any of the protocols out there are usually lacking in one area. So it really never gets fixed. We tend to concentrate on the diet, which is great in the short term, but terrible in the long term. In the 1960s, we had meat, and a lot of people were getting colon cancer. So then we got into macrobiotics, which is grain. Okay, after a little while, we found out that wasn't such a good thing because we were eating high protein wheat, which is what we call GMO wheat now. Okay, and we were starting to get sensitive to gluten. So we got sensitive to gluten, and what do? We put people on soy. People started getting sensitive to soy. So casein kind of got in there, dairy got kind of in there a little bit. Now it's, gluten, casein, soy, and now corn. Very soon, we're not going to be able to eat anything. So what's the big rage now? Paleo, okay, which is nothing more than a more specific Atkins type diet. So we went from meat to grains to meat. Why are we still getting sick? Because nobody fixes the base problem. Next week, we're going to talk a little bit about the cell danger response, which is going to put what Paul said and has been saying for the past couple of weeks into the proper relief. Okay. And of the things that can cause illness, and I'll talk about this, I'm just going to give you a little picture. The things that can cause illness, notice the sad cell. Okay. We all know about chemical and physical, and we all know about microbial illnesses. But what Paul has been talking about has been all of the psychological, emotional, and spiritual things that have just as much influence on the health of the cell or the damage to the cell as any of these microbes or any of these toxins. And I'll talk about it in more specificity next week. Because if you understand this stuff, you're going to be able, when you're listening to all that input being thrown at you, you're going to be able to separate the wheat from the chaff. And that's one of our goals, is to give you the power to do that.
Mate, I've seen that presentation, obviously, many times. I've got a copy of it, I believe, somewhere. And I think it's brilliant. Honestly, because it's the first time that people are actually getting to understand that the cells are going to react badly to these influences, whether it be heavy metals, whether it be emotional, whatever it is. And people need to get that understanding, because once you understand the pathway to get fixed, you can make permanent changes in people that never goes back.
Sure.
But no one wants you to do that, right? It's like when the rubber tire was the rubber tire that never wore out was invented, and Dunlop bought the rights to it for whatever hundreds of millions and burnt it and got rid of it, because that would never be any good, right? So that's why people don't want to have this long-term permanent change, because it will put you out of business. Fortunately, in our lifetimes, there's 9 billion people on the planet. We're not going to run out of business just yet. But,
it's true.
But the point is, we have got a movement going now, Jess. I promise you, right? Certainly in my practice, where people are understanding you've got to work 6 to 12 months on a process to get well. It's not just your acute problems.
Right.
It's all of the stuff from the ground up, and people are now starting to move into that sort of sphere of, that's how I need to be treated. And we both do that anyway, but there's few and far between, and we're going to see a lot more of that as we go on. So we will. Next week.
Paul, again, thanks so much, buddy. I will see you next week. Hang in there, everybody. Tell your friends. When you get this, give it the thumbs up. Okay, subscribe to the channels, and you'll be notified when this is released. We're going to be doing a podcast that's getting released every Friday. Hope you're enjoying this. Please feel free to email us and give us some suggestions, feedback, and so forth. So far, I'm getting really, really positive feedback about this particular subject area, and it's good. I'm looking forward to doing it again. Take care, everybody. See you next week.
Good night. Bye.